Welcome everyone into the room. We'll get started shortly. Just letting folks get situated and make sure they're all here and settled. My name is Mike, and we will get started just past 6:30 for our virtual art talk featuring Donick Cary and Steven Paul Judd. Thanks for being here. Just a few more moments before we get started. Thanks for joining into the room. For those of you who are new to the room, this is our virtual art talk at the Heard Museum with creatives Donick Cary and Steven Paul Judd. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our virtual art talk today. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Heard Museum continuing series of virtual art talks. My name is Mike Chokma. I am the Public Engagement Manager here at the Heard Museum, and it's our great pleasure to welcome our panelists today, writer, producer, and director Donick Cary, and contemporary visual artist, filmmaker, and author Steven Paul Judd. I'll be sure to provide their formal introductions just after these remarks, but some housekeeping real quick. As always, if you enjoy learning about these art pieces and exhibitions at the Heard and the museum's collections, I encourage you to visit the Heard Museum's Billie Jane Bagley Library and Archives here on campus. The library is free and open to the public Monday through Friday, and it's a fantastic place to learn more about the artists and works represented in the museum's collection. Virtual art talks are made possible by the support we receive from our Heard Museum members. Members get many special and exclusive benefits, including free museum admission every day, a 10% discount in the museum shops and cafe, and invitations to members-only events and lectures. Members also receive discounted event tickets and early admission to both the World Championship Hoop Dance Contest and the Heard Museum Guild Indian Fair and Market, both coming up at the beginning of next year, which is very close. Join as a member today. You can purchase your membership online, on site, or by calling in. Before I introduce our program, just a few more housekeeping notes for our viewers. Today's presentation is a webinar on Zoom, so you'll only see the screens and faces of our presenters. And if you'd like to propose a question for our panel, please write your question in the chat box or in the Q&A. You can find those by hovering over your screen and looking for those little icons on my screen. It's at the bottom of my screen. And we'll do your best to pose your questions during today's discussion. Captions are available. If you'd like to use them, just turn them on again, scrolling over your screen with the menu bar at the bottom. And with that, it's my pleasure to begin this art talk with some introductions for our guests. So, Emmy-winning writer, producer, and director Donick Cary got his start writing for Late Night with David Letterman. He continued writing for Dave at the Academy Awards and served as both head writer and the guy in the bear suit on Late Show with David Letterman. After 5 years in late night, Cary moved to The Simpsons. I think we all know The Simpsons, where he served as co-executive producer for seasons 7 through 11, winning an Emmy and penning many memorable episodes, lots of alliteration, including Doten in the Wind, In Marge We Trust, and Hell to Pay, the one where Homer gets his hair transplants from a killer. So Cary has since served in the same capacity on New Girl, Silicon Valley, AP Bio, Bored to Death, Just Shoot Me, and Parks and Recreation. Quite the list. And 2020 didn't only bring COVID, but brought the release of Cary's feature directorial debut, Have a Good Trip, Adventures in Psychedelics, which was selected by South by Southwest and debuted on Netflix in May of that year, hitting #1 overall on the platform in its first month. In 2023, Cary served as EP on Welcome to Flatch for Fox TV and Carol and the End of the World for Netflix. Currently, Cary has finished production on the new documentary, Hail to the Breadsticks, which we'll talk about today, a very personal look at team mascots, fatherhood, racism, and what it means to be Native American in America today. Moving right along, we have Steven Paul Judd. Steven is a Kiowa and Choctaw artist from Oklahoma, celebrated for his innovative blend of indigenous culture and pop art. A filmmaker, director, and visual artist, Judd's work spans various media, including murals, prints, t-shirts, digital art, and often using humor to challenge stereotypes about Native Americans. He first gained attention in Hollywood, working as a writer, for Disney XD's series Zeke and Luther before transitioning to visual arts. Judd's art has earned numerous accolades, including a United States Artist Fellowship, and he has been Emmy nominated multiple times. His vibrant and thought-provoking pieces have led to collaborations with major brands like Marvel and HBO, to name a few. Judd also co-founded The Natives, the NTVS, that's how you spell it, a Native American streetwear brand, and remains an influential figure in Indigenous entrepreneurship. Steven Paul Judd's sculpture, which we'll look at today, titled Change, examines the racism embedded in major sports franchises, particularly focusing on the Washington football team's former name and mascot. The piece consists of memorabilia from the team arranged to cast a shadow spelling out change, symbolizing both the recent name change and a broader call to confront systemic racism. I am so excited to get into this call today, y'all. Thank you so much for being here. To our guests, thank you for coming through and listening this evening. A little bit different from our usual virtual art talks, but nonetheless very exciting. So y'all, anything you want to say to open up the space here?
Thrilled to be here. Good to see you both. Steven, it's been too long.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Donick.
All right, so I do have a couple questions just to prime us, but I'm really excited to see the discussions that come from it and kind of the nuggets of gold that all of you have in your creative brains. So Starting off, your works combine humor and serious reflection to address cultural misrepresentation, whether through Donick's road trip style documentary or Steven's often satirical art. Uh, what would you say is humor's role in these conversations about serious topics like racism and cultural erasure?
I mean, I'll jump in, Stephen, cut me off whenever, whatever. But I would say, probably at The Simpsons is where I first learned about this sort of magic trick, which is if you get people laughing, talk. They're willing to talk more about almost anything. They're willing to listen a little more. It brings people's guards down, and you can get bigger subject matter in. Um, we did episodes there about Catholicism and gay rights and gun control, and you were like, "Oh, it's just a kids' cartoon. No one cares," and it kind of slid in all these bigger topics to talk about. So it's been a natural place for me to always start a conversation. If you get people smiling, you might get somewhere.
Yeah, I echo what Donick says. For me, I guess I'm very it's unfortunate. I've seen people admit they're wrong in real time, and I'm like, it's so effortless. It looks great, but I can't do that. Like, I wish I could do that. It's such a really cool gift. But if I find out I'm wrong, I dig in, I get embarrassed, I want to push back. So knowing that about me and seeing other people handle it better, I started thinking, okay, if I'm that way, and I try not to be that way, and it still is inside me. I thought, well, maybe if I want to help, maybe if there's something I want to affect change in or get a point across, especially dealing with Native issues, I thought, what if I let the person come to the realization themselves? So instead of me saying, "You're so dumb, this is the way it should be," I think, okay, what if I do something funny? They laugh at it and they go, "Oh, wait," and then in their head, "Oh, wait, that I've said that or I've done that." So then no one's called them out. They kind of called their self out, or they've readjusted their perspective. And then if they're on their way home, they start thinking, "Oh, I never thought about it that way." If I think and probably Donick's work, obviously through The Simpsons, probably made plenty of people say, "I never thought about it that way." You know, but it's without getting in your face and embarrassing you for it. It's letting someone come to it on their own.
And that's where real change is once people can actually make that jump themselves. So it's getting down that one extra level where they actually can do that. And I love that, Stephen. That's, yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. And then the picture on the screen right now, it doesn't feel too humorous, right? But this is kind of the sculpture that we want to focus on for a conversation today. Speaking about change.
And real quick, I'm sorry,
Yes,
but
sir.
this lies into that. It makes you think, because you're probably looking at it as, how did they do this? How is, oh, that was so, oh, wait a minute, so instead of hitting them first with "you suck," it's like people will think about this at first. At least I think they would. I'd be going, wait, okay, oh, there's the C.
Yeah.
Right, it's like a puzzle before it's a statement. So
Yeah.
you want to do the puzzle and engage. Your brain's already hooked. The other element of this for me, I think, Michael, you asked about this in the preview, but like this is actually all stuff that came directly from our house, from our game room. This was a screening room where we watch football games, and we went on this journey and did a lot of figuring out different ways to change and how to rethink about things, and eventually came to a point where we were ready to let the stuff go. And we let the stuff go and had a good time, and then the stuff was just sitting in boxes, and we were kind of going like, well, now what do we do? Is this how can we make this stuff do something powerful rather than just fill a garbage dump? And luckily we had met Steven at that point. It was like he might have some ideas. He's good at this.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, I mean, what went into that creative process for turning these objects into a statement about appropriation?
Yeah.
And then I have a follow-up for you, Donick.
Well, when Donick had approached me about this, and he told me the story, it was an awesome story, which you can see in the documentary about his son. That's actually kind of a humorous story, how he came on this journey. And then he said, "I have this stuff in boxes I'd like to send to you. and just see what he didn't tell me what to do. He just said, see if something comes to mind. So I didn't know, you get something and then you start thinking, you think about what are we trying to say? How can we use this? The first thing I did was I got the boxes, and then I took whichever was the most valuable and I sold them on eBay. So the Joe Theismann Super Bowl ring, made myself a quick 15,000. No, I took all the stuff and just started playing with it, just to see if it could work. And I pitched the idea to Donick, and he was digging it, so we moved full steam ahead.
And thankfully this lives at the Herd Museum now. It's such a pleasure to be able to.
Yeah, thank you. It looks really, with so much time since I've seen it, it looks better than I thought it did actually in my head. When you're building it, it doesn't look, you're just so used to it. But I'm looking at it almost like a new person looking at it. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very neat. I loved it when I first was able to lay my eyes on the sculpture. With Donick, these being your personal items from home, how did watching the transformation impact your own relationship furthermore with, your history and the team's history? Was there any new new ideas or revelations from, the completed work of Stevens?
Yeah. I mean, look, like these are complicated. This is one of those things that it's like sports teams and fandom is when it's in its bubble is kind of silly and whatever, and allows us to take it really seriously. And once you connect it to humans, it becomes very complicated, and then it's not silly. So all of this stuff has two meanings for me.
Mm,
It was always harmless fun within our little bubble, and then it became this thing that was like, wow, when I have human friends who this affects in a different way, and then it started to affect me that way, um, we wanted to figure out something to do with it. So, part of change that really helps is meeting other people who you then love and trust and want to understand how they see the world. And Stephen was one of those people. We hung out a little bit. I really dug what he was doing, really followed his art and his socials, and was like, man, this guy's on just a really cool way of dissecting, reinterpreting, reappropriating stuff, and making you see stuff in a different way, constantly shifting your point of view, which we were in the process of doing, and so we were looking for helpers, guides, people we trusted who could go like, who would do it with love too, who weren't just like what Steven's saying, which isn't just like, you dumb racist, don't you get it? And then you go like, well, wait, what? I don't want, and then you push back. So all the stuff he was saying. So it's still, I look at it and I still have like, I was also impressed, like seeing it after a while. I was like, whoa, that's beautiful. That's a really cool art
yeah.
piece. And then I also have this micro thing, which I'm like, oh, but that toy truck, like I've had since I was 8 years old, that still connects
Wow.
me to my father. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's a complicated, but I also think all of the stuff in this connect people to their fandom and their teams and their families and whatever context they rooted for that in. And, hopefully it's a little bit of a nudge to go like, look, it's okay to change. We all survive change. It's, we're all right. We're doing
Mm.
fine. The team's doing better than ever, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Curse was
Um,
lifted.
so Stephen, oh, here's a little capture from the documentary poster, Hail to the Breadsticks, that I want to get into in just a second. I also wanted to kind of cover a little bit of Stephen's work. Your art often blends pop culture with native culture, like in the image here, the Superman or the Rock'em Sock'em robots, which is here. How did working on change the sculpture compared to other projects in terms of messaging, if any?
Wow. Yeah. It's probably, well, I would say 95% of the things I do is my own. I wake up and I want to make something or say something. This was different because, it was Donick coming to me. I think he might have told me about it. He and his son were driving across country, and they were driving through Oklahoma City, and we met up at a barbecue spot. And he had told me about the story, and So I think it was a little bit more pressure because when I make stuff for myself, you just make it, that's the fun of making things for me. It's the making of it. That's the fun part. Doing this with Donick, that adds a little bit of pressure because you don't want to let anyone down, So I think that the getting to what the image was going to be wasn't any different than what I make before, but the added pressure of not wanting to let someone down probably was the only difference.
Well, the other thing, just to add, we also had a deadline. Like we were like, we had a clock on it. So it wasn't like, hey, think about this and see what comes out. It was like, hey, think about it, see what, and then deliver in like 2 weeks or whatever. I can't remember. And we have to get it to Arizona.
That was the big part, right? I put it together. Oh yeah, we got to move it. I was like, wait, what?
The other thing just that was sort of funny, which is about the stuff, because our lives are, we're snowballs who collect and build, and stuff gathers around us that isn't really the sum total of what our lives mean anyway, but it's fun to play with stuff while you're here. But we sent Steven, he was like, sure, send me the stuff, and we sent him, and he was probably shocked when 6 boxes of stuff arrived. But he built this thing. We did the piece in it. We brought it to the herd. We had a wonderful opening. The piece looks great. And then Steven called me like 3 months later and was like, there's still a bunch of this lying around. I'm just going to send it back to you, because there was pieces that didn't fit and spell words. And so at that point, the team dropped the name. And we got this box of collectibles of my favorite team in the mail that I actually, like, there was a signed helmet from John Riggins or whatever in there. And I was like, well, is it okay to have this stuff now that we are moving on? And so, well, this isn't in the movie, but quietly, Otis and I changed all the logos on the helmets to just W's and kept a few of the things that were left over. So we started rebuilding it all fresh.
That's actually, oh, go ahead.
Is it true the W stands for white guy?
Yes. No. Just Washington. Just Washington.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I thought they might have went the other way. I didn't know.
That'd be amazing. That'd be amazing.
White.
With that, Donick, I think, especially through the documentary and even with the statement you made right now of, what are the changes that we need to make when we have perspectives that, have changed. I wanted to ask, either or, it doesn't matter the order, but what is the role of non-natives when approaching explicitly native-centered issues? I think I come across the conflicting ideas of how to be an ally and take up space with that communication, or maybe step back a little bit. But yeah, what do you feel? What do you all feel is the role of non-natives when approaching these issues, and then when promoting them and educating with things like this?
I really want to do the joke of like, I'll handle this one, Steven. But,
Yeah.
but I'll let you speak to that first.
Yeah, I think, I can only speak for myself, and people have very strong opinions, and everyone's opinions is their opinion. So I would just go, for me, I feel like no one knows what they don't know. And perspective, it's hard to be in someone else's perspective when you've been in your own perspective. So I actually give a lot of latitude for people learning, but then once they've learned, that's when that it's a lot smaller for me. But I think the best way is how Donick did it. He reached out, and it was a conversation, and not just with me but with others, but for me specifically, there's a conversation. And I think that's the way to do it, especially if you can find someone that's in the Native community and at least get their perspective. And it may not be the same, keeping in mind their perspective may not be same as the next guy's perspective.
Yeah, and I think there's a without, this is, again, it's like you don't want to be preachy because then it's like coming at people, but I do think there's a responsibility across all media for people who have platforms to use it and share it and figure out ways for everybody to get their voices on there. And I didn't know really about how that would look or how that would work. I knew we went into this story as really not knowing what the answers were. You know, this was a documentary. We were like really doing an experiment. And it really was, from our perspective, where it started was me and my son had an issue. We didn't know what the answer was. And he suggested we talk to Native Americans. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Oh, they might have a take on this thing that is about them, maybe, or that we're, you know, like it's confusing. But when we started to talk to Native Americans, we started to understand a lot of these issues: representation, misrepresentation. What does invisibility look like? How does this happen? And things started to blow our mind. I had no idea there were 570 plus tribal identities with federal recognition right now. And I went, well, how did I miss that? Why is no one telling me that? Why are there 570 plus countries in this country? That are they even countries? What are those perspectives? But it made the movie much richer and more interesting, and the story more interesting for us to be kind of having our minds blown. And then it also became clear that part of the movie should be getting out of the way and turning over the story to other people and letting them tell it, which is the bigger kind of lesson. But we kind of had to do both in this particular doc, you know? And you know, I'm so glad Killers of the Flower Moon came out, but it probably wouldn't have happened without Scorsese. But like, we're still in this moment where we'll take it. It's great to have that story out in the world, you know. Hopefully 10 years from now, that's made by a Native American filmmaker. Hopefully I don't have to tell this story, and there's not, you know, there's not stories about white guys who don't know anything and their kids are going like, Dad, we should go do this and that. That we know more then. But I mean, the quick answer to me is always listening, involving the people your stories are about as much as possible, and then figuring out where that line is like, do they have the power to tell it? Then go for it, you know?
Yeah, the conversation. In fact, I remember, I think it was when I first met Donick. We were at the Sundance Film Festival, I believe.
Yeah.
He came and talked. Well, there was a house of us. Natives were staying in one house, so there was a bunch of us there. You know, everyone in one house, rent one house for the stay, and he came over and talked to all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. This movie is the product of 1,000 uncomfortable conversations of just going like, all right, here's my idiotic take on things. Do you want to deal with this or not? Because that's up to you. You don't have to. And then a lot of, you know, great people were like, I felt like often we were going like, Steven would take a deep breath, or Sterling Harjo would take a deep breath, or Deb Haaland would take a deep breath and go like, all right, I'm going to explain from my perspective how I see this, and everybody added something else to it, which is how we eventually changed, was how it brought us along and got us to go like, oh, I have a really deep understanding of this now because of all those voices.
I really love that explanation of that learning process of, you know, notifying these folks who took that deep breath and was like, all right, let's do some education. It's making me think of a question even right now in today's climate. You know, what would you say? And I think I'm kind of leading with this answer, but what are some techniques for being able to speak about some of the unspeakable things, or the tougher ideas where people don't necessarily where it's like a kind of a clash instead of a unity of vision in the beginning? Is there tenets, is there skills that you use to be able to navigate? And again, it might be a leading conversation based off of an earlier question here.
Yeah, you know, I think everything's case by case. You know, if you're an Indigenous person, you probably are constantly getting asked questions. And, you know, I'm not an authority, you know. So that's the first thing I always think, oh man, I don't hear it. So it's always, this is how I feel based on my own lived experience growing up. And you hope that when people are asking questions that they really want to learn, and not, all right, I'm waiting for their answer, so as soon as they're done, I can say this. You know, that's the worst. You know, I try to stop myself from doing that as well. I'm just waiting for this person to say their part so I can really say my part, you know, instead of just listening to what they say and try to understand and learn.
Yeah, and to me, there's like there's three pieces always, is like food, music, humor. There's like things that connect humans. Let's start with those. And once we're eating barbecue and talking, it becomes a lot more fun. And once we're seeing a band we all like, it's a lot more fun. Suddenly you're having fun together, and then the conversation comes up in a more organic way about like, so by the way, I'm working on this thing. It's really fucking hard. I'm not sure where it's going to go. What do you think? Oh, cool. So I sometimes it's burying it in, not hiding it, but like, let's get to know each other as just as friends first, and then we can have a friendly conversation rather than there's sort of fear or you know. I mean, I think I was lucky, Steven. I don't know how much this helped, but like I had two things going for me. I'd go into, we went in, for example, onto the Navajo Res, and we're out there at like, we were there at midnight. We're like, does anyone want to talk? It just happened to be when we were there. But I had an 8-year-old who was like asking very simple questions, and everybody looks at a little kid. I don't care, color, class, wherever they're from, and goes like, oh, we want to educate this kid. There's hope. Everybody's got hope when a little kid asks a question. So
Right.
that was one thing that really helped, was Otis was along for this journey, kind of like breaking it down for me. And the other one, which I don't know how to recommend this for people, but if you can work on The Simpsons for a little while, everybody's like, oh, you worked on The Simpsons? And then they have questions for you, and it starts to have a back and forth going. Anyway.
And I think that speaks to when you become friends with someone, it's a lot easier to understand their perspective. It's easy to dismiss someone's concerns if you're not friends with them or friends with someone in that group, because
Right.
it personalizes it. Like you think about, oh, how would my friend feel about this? I didn't realize I was affecting my friend that way.
And for me, it always was like, I'm gonna say some dumb stuff because I'm trying to figure out something,
Mhm.
and I don't want to. I want to do that in a friendly way where you're not just gonna kick me out. Where we're gonna go like, okay, I see where you're missing this here. I guess this is the thing that I kept hitting on, was like, we're living in a world of blacks and whites. All the questions are like yes or no, or you're for this or you're against that, and everything is actually nuanced. Everything requires an actual conversation. You just got to spend a little time with it and unravel some things, especially when you're talking about like why are Native Americans so underrepresented? There's not like one right or wrong answer. That's a very complicated, subject to get into, and you're gonna make some dumb assumptions, and you're gonna have to back those up. You're gonna have to talk about. So if you're laughing, and then it's safe to do that.
So what I'm hearing, that it doesn't occur on the comment threads online at all. Maybe friendship first.
Oh man, I can't wait to put this movie out and see the comments section. Like,
Oh,
because it's,
that'd be comments turned off.
yeah, yes.
Let me go to a little bit of a slide here with talking about the documentary. So both the documentary and the sculpture explore this idea of passing down traditions, for better or for worse, whether it's the football team's legacy or cultural stories, cultural narratives. How do you think that through an artistic lens, or through art, how does art facilitate the evolution of these legacies? And maybe how have your personal experiences with these legacies shifted after working on something like this?
I mean, I would say, things like a national football team, it's very hard for someone in the fan base to go like, well, it must be okay. And the National Football League has signed off on it. That's probably the biggest authority we have in this country, that everyone kind of goes like, more so than the White House, whatever. We all kind of go like, the NFL, they're doing it. Okay, I guess it makes, it. So it's very hard to go like, well, wait, how would they have it wrong? So then you have to do a lot of personal questioning. You have to back up from that. I think I was reading something this week about neural pathways. When we get these neural pathways that are set in a set in stone after a while. And then I was reading in galleries, actually looking at original art, those start to tingle and open up, and it's actually really healthy for your brain to walk through somewhere like the Herd, visit with Steven and look at his gallery. Your brain, you're actually exercising your brain and growing your brain. And allowing it then allows for you to change perspectives. Get different perspectives, can kind of sneak in there from these hard and past. So the quick answer I would say is art hopefully is in a very friendly way, allowing you to like actually change the way you see the world, see a little bit through other people's shoes, and grow. evolve.
Yeah, I agree. And I think working on this, it's always just reminders for me. I always try to be introspective about it, not necessarily what is someone else learning, but what can I learn? And it's really for me about always like I tend to get in a bubble. The people I talk to tend to like art and they tend to have the same views as me. Fortunately, I live half the year in Oklahoma, so so I get to hear different viewpoints sometimes, but it cuts through the stereotype of what you might think I'm hearing. I'm hearing more on personal levels, people's viewpoints and how they form their opinions. And I think working on something like this, it helped me to say, okay, I'm hoping to change the way someone thinks, but I need to be very pragmatic and open-minded myself to hear someone first, and not necessarily on this topic, but just in general when we're talking about how does art change you. Balloons for everybody. How does art change you? And hopefully it's helping me to give compassion to people when they're trying to learn.
Yeah, I'll say also going out on these interviews, we sat down with people. Everyone's stories were incredible. We interviewed probably 75 people, and every one of those interviews was an hour long. And the movie can only hold, like so much. But if anything, I was learning something every day. It was very, very exciting. That's what's exciting about making art is you're actually changing while you do it.
And what do you think, or what do you hope audiences take away about the role of this film and art, and not just critiquing these symbols, these cultural symbols that are just part of our everyday lives, like you're saying, the NFL says it's okay, let's run with it. But you know, what do you hope they'll take away in offering new ways forward with how we engage with and represent different identities?
Yeah, since it's Donick film, I'll let him have the last word on that. But for myself, I hope twofold. Um, I hope there is a shift in perspective for maybe someone that didn't have it, and it's that person that can be reached because we're not saying you're dumb. So that's awesome. Someone can see this and say, "Oh man, oh my gosh, I said the same thing. I thought the same thing. I see how that can come across. When maybe this person, we're only 2% of the population, Native people. So there's a chance this person has never hung out with a Native person. So humanizing people always helps. And then beyond that, just on the art side, I hope that maybe someone who doesn't like art or doesn't, I don't really want to go to museums, but maybe they'll see this and go, oh, they have stuff like this at museums? Because I find this interesting. And like Donick said, your neurons moving a little way. And I personally, whether it be a film, music, or an art piece, I enjoy allowing myself to be emotional looking at it. It's such a man, when you're moved by an art piece, it's such I don't have the words to describe it, but once you're able to start doing that, I think it opens up a whole new world for you.
Yeah, right on. Totally. Wait, did I freeze? No.
No.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought I froze. Um, I would say, yeah, I think the thing that we landed on was, these football teams and representation, whether it's the Kansas City Chiefs, and we're still doing these stories where it's like Taylor Swift has embraced the Kansas City Chiefs because we love Taylor Swift, we love Travis Kelce, we love Patrick Mahomes, love everybody. But when Taylor Swift goes to Japan and does a tour, all these young Japanese kids show up in Kansas City Chiefs gear because they think that's cool and what America's doing right now. And you're like, these brands are so powerful, right? So that's one thing that is like, how do we get people to even think about that when they're so powerful and winning Super Bowls, and they still have a tribal drum they beat before the games there, and they're kind of like, but it's cool because we won the Super Bowl. And you're like, okay, you guys got to look at that. That's something to look at. But the bigger part of it, which I think is the answer, which is, yeah, Native Americans might be only 2% of this population, but they're a hugely integral, big piece of this population and the stories we've just started to scratch the surface. Now, in the 7 years since we started this doc, there's been a lot more representation. But I think we also have a tendency to go like, okay, we did reservation dogs, check, trend, done. You're like, wait, no. What are more stories? When you talk about boarding schools, for example, you go like the amount of stories just about the boarding school or what's it called in Canada? I'm sorry, residential schools. When you talk about those experiences and the thousands and thousands and thousands of people those affected, those stories are as powerful as any stories that came out of the Holocaust. And we barely started to talk about what that means, and then generationally what that means, and then how that connects up to invisibility. And so there's thousands of stories that are yet to be told. And I think that's the big thing, which I hope this is a little part of, is, hey, look at these 30, 40, 50 cool people we just introduced you to. Look at the shit they're working on, all this cool stuff. And by the way, there's a lot more of that out there. Just poke around a little bit. Use your platforms to start telling those stories, sharing those stories, hearing those stories. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be scary and defensive.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that explanation. I want to give some chances for the audience to chime in with maybe a couple questions before we end here in about 15 minutes. So if you're part of the audience and you have a question for these two, please engage in the Q&A in the chat. But my last question, kind of prompted here, is on a lighter note, with the humor coming back into it. This documentary does have moments of heavy reflection and some tough interactions with folks who may be disagreeable, but there's also so much laughter and so much fun, and sometimes a little campiness. I love that there's like a reimagining of The Simpsons. What was the funniest or strangest moment, like just a really fond memory from the process of working together on this, but also as part of the documentary as well?
That's a good question. I should have a killer, hilarious. I would say, what was wonderful about this was like it started with, I watch football with my dad every weekend. My parents were divorced, but I go watch football with him. That was like what me and my dad did. We'd play catch a little bit, and that was huge. That was how we bonded, or one of the ways we bonded. So I was really excited with my son. I was like, well, we're gonna watch football. And he'd sit out there and I'd put the games on, and he was like, oh, well, can we make some more popcorn? Can I get a hot dog? Like, he didn't really care about football the way I did. And it took me a minute to go, oh, he don't want to do this. And then he asked this question. And instead, I got to travel with him and meet people and go on these adventures with him where we got to watch each other out of our comfort zones and learn and grow together. That was the coolest part of all of this. And I guess just off the top of my head, the one thing, we had so many adventures, but one of the funniest part was where Otis, who's like, he was 8 and 9 years old while we were shooting this, and not really rattled as long as he got his hot dog and some popcorn along the way. But he interviewed Deb Haaland, right? And we were in Congress, and he had to put on a nice shirt, and he had to get his questions ready. And he was like, Dad, this is a big one. I'm really nervous. I'm like, yes, it's a congresswoman. This is really big. So that was pretty funny watching him actually get a little rattled.
Steven, any strange, funny moments here?
No, I guess I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. I'm sorry about that.
Well, I'll tell you.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you one for you, Steven. I was trying to get Steven to do you've got a beautiful, is it a Trans Am or a Camaro? Trans Am.
Yes, Firebird, yeah, Trans Am, yep.
Firebird, beautiful gold Firebird Trans Am. And he made this art piece in Oklahoma City, and we had to get it in Arizona. And I wanted so badly for Steven to put it on a trailer in the back of the car, and then do a Cannonball Run style little montage drive across country with that on the back. But we couldn't get that together. That was a fun idea.
Yeah, it's an old Trans Am, but that may be making an appearance soon. Donick, I'll talk to you offline. I may be bringing it back out.
Awesome.
Getting a new motor put in right now. I got to say, as hopefully there's a question, but you saw me looking around. So there was, on my balcony, I live 23 stories up. This is no joke, 100 wasps were flying around. And I talked to the building and they said, yeah, it's underneath the ledge and we can't get to it. So I said, all right, I'm opening my doors today. I'm gonna let them come in. I'm gonna get them, this is because I want to be able to go outside. And I looked up online that they don't sleep, but at night they kind of chill out. So I opened the door and it was before this, it gets dark here at 6:30. I went to get something to eat. So once they were in here, I counted them up, had about 60 in here. So I closed the door. I went to get something to eat. I came back and they're all gone. And now I'm like, I think I might have made a mistake. I don't know, like they're hiding in my apartment somewhere. So I was looking every now and then, I'll see one fly out. I don't know where they went. So
They're scheming against you.
yeah, I know. So if you don't see me tomorrow, make sure there's a full investigation starting with these swamps.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
crazy. I'm like, no lie, over 65, and I can only see maybe 10. So I don't know where they are. I'm scared.
You're
They're
gonna
hiding.
sell a sculpture to somebody, and then they're gonna go, and then the 60 wasp flew out of it. And got
Oh my God. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, I'd plan on coming back. I have this motorcycle helmet I was going to put on, and I have this big leather coat, and I was going to try to fight them, and then they're gone. So I don't know what I'm going to do tonight. So
Maybe they're hiding in the black portions of all your art in the back room.
yes.
Um, maybe a last question for us. We're interested. We want to follow you. What are you all working on now, that we can expect, look forward to, or kind of, tell our friends, hey, did you hear? They're working on this.
Yeah. I've been writing and producing on a show called Dark Winds. It's on AMC, but you can also look at it on Netflix. We are top 10 in the country for 5 weeks in a row this couple of months ago. And I directed an episode in season 3 that'll come out, I don't know, in the new year, January through April, it's going to come out. But I got to direct my first television episode. So that's exciting. I have a comic book.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. I have a comic book coming out through a company called Mad Cave, and I don't know if anyone's here old enough to remember a tabloid called Weekly World News. Feel like Bat Boy runs for
Yes.
president, Bigfoot.
Yes, yes.
So I have the rights to that title, and I have written a comic book with a friend of mine, and we sold it to a publisher, so that should be coming out sometime next year. And then I'm currently in development of my own TV show. I have 2 TV shows that are in 2 different stages of development, which means could mean nothing. It could mean something, as we all know, but it's still fun, and it allows me to keep creative. And then of course, you mentioned the natives. We'll have some new stuff coming out here pretty soon, and I was able to work with a couple of other clothing companies this year. And then art-wise, I am making a new I should have brought it out here. I'm working on I've had this idea probably for
We have 10 minutes.
yeah, real fast. Yeah, but it's basically, I have bought in the other room, I have one of those horses that you would see in front of a gas station where you put the quarter in and it goes like this. So my idea is to sand it, repaint it as a ledger style drawing, then draw like an 8 foot by 10 foot ledger paper behind it with other drawings. And then when you put the quarter in, it'll play like Tribe Called Red or something. So it'll be a 3-dimensional ledger piece is the idea.
Very cool. I think there's some space for some installations here at the herd. So
Oh,
again,
I love it. We could unveil it there maybe.
And what
Um,
about what about your movie that came out this year too? Your short film.
Oh yeah, thank you, Doc. I directed and wrote a short film for George R. R. Martin, who wrote the Game of Thrones stories. He hired me to write and direct a short film. It's called Mary Margaret Road Grader, and it's a like post-apocalyptic with native people. So it's like Road Warrior, but all native tribes. So the idea is like in the future, tribes got back together to help stay alive. But once a year, all the tribes meet and they have this tractor pull, and it's just stars Martin Sinsmeyer and Crystal Lightning. And yeah, we're traveling with it right now. In fact, last week we were at a place called Wasteland Weekend. I don't know if some of you guys know what that is, but we won their film festival. And so really excited about that. And we are traveling with that right now.
It's so cool. I got to see it a few months or in July, whatever. Yeah, August. It was awesome. It's awesome. It blew me away.
Thanks,
Uh,
Tom.
And yeah, I'll jump in. I'm also working on a horse that plays Tribal Red. It's weird. I'm trying to beat Steven to
It's a
market.
race. Yeah, it's a race to see who gets it done first.
I guess I'll start with Hail to the Breadsticks. Like we're trying to figure out how, it's a weird market right now for stuff. It's hard to, we had sort of a glory golden age of documentaries about 3 years ago, and then it went back to like kind of they're out there, but no one's just buying them and putting them on. So we have a little bit of a we're trying to figure out how to the best way to get this out into the world and share it with people. We're looking for partners in that. If anyone has ideas, we definitely think there's an educational component. We've done a lot of screenings. We actually won Best Oklahoma Feature at the Dead Center Film Festival because there were Oklahoma natives in the film. So, Steven, thank you for helping us weirdly win that award back in your hometown. But we've had great conversations and great screenings around at different places, and are looking forward to getting that out in the next year in a bigger way. So open to that. We're also really debating the title, because it was one thing if we were just going to sell it and put it out in the world. Hail to the Breadsticks is complicated. It's the team's fight song, and we changed it because there's some jokes in the movie about breadsticks, and you'll see why when you watch the movie. But it's harder in a world of streaming for people to find something called Hail to the Breadsticks and know what the hell that is about. So we're really racking our brains of like, do we change it? Do we not change it? We love that, but is that just us? So anyway, we're working on that. I'm in the firmly in the Hollywood game too, of just like, you're developing, you're pitching, you're having 50 meetings, you're seeing this might go, this might not go. Currently I'm helping out on a show called Jay for Netflix, which isn't out yet, but they bought 5 scripts to see if it's a thing. It's fun. It's just it's this guy Joe Bennett who did Scavenger's Reign. He did some kind of cool animated shows that people have maybe seen. But this is about a group of people who work at a big box store and their adventures, and one very magical individual who helps. So I'm writing one of those right now. That's pretty fun.
Is that animated?
That's animated, yeah. And Joe's really he makes sort of epic, almost anime beautiful. So it's an anime comedy sort of epic, like it's sort of like Heavy Metal the movie meets The Simpsons or something. Like it's a weird but that's pretty fun. I'm also, if anyone knows there's these guys, the Wolves of Glendale. They're a comedy rock band. They're amazing. I'm trying to help them figure out how to get a show on the air. They're just super funny. They travel all the time, so if they come to your town, go check them out. They're real fun. And then we just did our big fundraiser here. I have a charity called musack.org, MUSACK. We support kids' music programs across the country, including in a number of places where we did interviews on this. So the Navajo Res and Pine Ridge, we've supported programs in different places. But we had a fun weekend here with Jim James from My Morning Jacket and Me First and the Gimme Gimmes at a big backyard rock show. So always doing that. Check that out. We always have fun events related to that to raise money for kids' music. So
Oh, that sounds really awesome. You all are very, very busy. Thank you. Thank you so much for the conversation. We have a couple minutes left, maybe just for a few announcements that I really want to make sure folks hear, especially coming up for us, Donick, in the realm of screening. So thank you again. I'm very appreciative, and I hope that we can continue to stay up to date with all of the amazing stuff that you all have coming out. So really quickly, because you had mentioned Dark Winds, Steven, I wanted to share my screen really quickly. We have something called First Friday here at the Heard Museum, and the next First Friday is on November 1st, so next Friday. And we're inviting IA out to the campus. Our schedule of activities includes Desba, also a writer and actor on Dark Winds. We also have Deborah Taffa, Brennan Shea Basham coming through to talk about their books, and maybe a couple friends of yours, Migizi, here on campus to give also some updates on what they're working on.
Migizi knocking it out of the park right now. That guy,
yes,
a lot of cool stuff.
So that's coming up for us. And then also coming up for us includes a really, really exciting festival season screening of Hail to the Breadsticks held here on campus, along with the panel discussion. We're going to have Joey Clift, we're going to have Lindy Vision, our friend Donick here, all participating in that conversation. So if you are local to Arizona, please make sure to make it out for that special screening. It is open to the public, so we'll do that 11:30 for panel discussion and 2 p.m. screening. in our steel auditorium. And then one extra little thing that we have going on is these virtual art talks. We love if you would be able to continue participating in these virtual art talks featuring really, really engaging artists and that are kind of making big moves in their own respect. So we're going to have our 2024 featured ornament artist, part of our ornament marketplace at the shop. We have a brand new museum shop, and we would love for all of you to come check it out and first hear from the featured ornament artist. That's happening November 21st at 12 p.m. But other than that, thank you to all our guests. Thank you to our panelists. And yeah, we will talk again soon, I hope.
Thank you. Can't wait to see everybody November 9th for the screening too. We'll see you then.
Yes, we'll also have a performance by Kenneth Shirley. So after the screening, make sure to come see Indigenous Enterprise. But have a
Right on.
wonderful night, you all.
Thanks, everybody.